Some stories don't begin with words. They begin with silence, with a mother who never said too much and a daughter who always felt there was something left unsaid. Ava had lived a quiet life in Rio de Janeiro, full of books, coffee-scented mornings, and bittersweet memories of her late mother, Caroline. They had always been close, but still, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that her mother had carried a secret to the grave. She just didn't expect the truth to be hidden between the pages of a novel. It was a rainy Sunday, one of those days when memories seem louder. Ava stood in front of the wooden bookshelf in her mother's old apartment, the one she hadn't had the courage to clear out yet. She ran her fingers across the spines of the books, pausing on one of Caroline's favorites, Wuthering Heights. She opened it without thinking, and a folded piece of paper slipped from the middle and fell at her feet. It wasn't old enough to crumble, but the ink had faded slightly with time. She opened it, and with every word, her breath grew shorter. My dearest Ava, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer by your side. And it also means I never found the courage to tell you what I should have told you long ago. You have the strength of two people inside you, mine and your father's. Yes, Ava, I'm talking about your real father. I didn't keep him from you out of hate, but out of fear. What happened between us was brief, intense, and unforgettable. But when I found out I was pregnant, he was already gone. I never gave him a chance to know. His name is David Harper. Maybe one day you'll look for him, or maybe not. I just want you to know that you were never a mistake, with all the love I was capable of. Caroline. Ava stood frozen. The only sound in the room was the rain tapping against the windows. She had a name, a man, a piece of a story she had never heard, and suddenly her own story felt incomplete. She sat on the floor, the letter trembling in her hands, and whispered, David Harper. The name echoed like thunder inside her chest. That night, Ava barely slept. The name David Harper kept looping in her mind like a melody she had just learned and couldn't stop humming. She repeated it silently while brushing her teeth, while making coffee, while staring at her reflection, searching for signs of a man she had never met. Her mother had always said she had her own eyes. But now, Ava questioned everything. The shape of her lips, her nose, her quick temper. What if all of that had a different origin? She sat on her balcony, the same spot where Caroline used to drink her coffee in silence. From there, she could see the city stretching into the horizon. But today, the world felt smaller, as if her entire universe had been condensed into a name on a letter. She picked up her phone and opened the search bar. David Harper. Dozens of results came up. Journalists, professors, lawyers, but none of them seemed to match. It was too little to go on, and still, she felt a strange urge to keep digging. Suddenly, a childhood memory flashed, her mother crying silently in the kitchen, a moment Ava had buried for years. Back then, she thought it was about work or money, but what if it had been something deeper? What if her mother had been mourning a choice? That evening, Ava returned to the bookshelf. She scanned every book. Nothing. Then she opened an old leather box tucked away in the bottom drawer. Inside, faded photos, receipts, a napkin from a long-closed cafe, and a note written on hotel stationery. To see, for the best afternoon I've ever had. Let's never forget it. D. A chill ran through her. It wasn't proof, but it was something. She pressed the note against her chest and closed her eyes. There was a name now, a letter, a memory, and maybe a chance. 2 days passed before Ava gathered the courage to take the next step. She held the hotel note in her hands like a compass. On the back, a logo and an old landline number were barely legible. She called it, not expecting anyone to answer. But someone did. An elderly man with a hoarse voice picked up. Hotel Mirante. We're closed to the public, only open for private events now. Ava explained that she wasn't looking for a reservation, just information. Maybe from old records. There was a pause on the line. Then he asked, "Are you Caroline's daughter?" The world stopped. "How do you—" "She came here often, always alone. But once, many years ago, she came with a man. They laughed like they were 17. I never forgot it. He left her a note at the front desk. She didn't read it right away." Ava's throat tightened. "Do you know his name?" "I don't. But he was tall, with dark curly hair and a gentle way about him. American, I think." Her chest fluttered with a strange mix of fear and excitement. "Do you know if he ever came back?" "No. She did, though, a few months later. And she cried the whole time." That night, Ava couldn't stop thinking about what the man had said. Caroline had returned, not to relive a memory, but to grieve it. And Ava, she was caught in the middle of a story frozen in time. She sat down with her laptop and typed, "David Harper, plus journalist, plus Brazil." A headline appeared in the results. "Sunday Stories, the columnist who fell in love with Rio." She clicked. There it was, a black and white photo of a man in his late 50s with a warm smile and eyes full of history. Dark, curly hair streaked with grey. A face so familiar it made her heart skip. Below the photo, David Harper, columnist and editor, known for his nostalgic chronicles of Brazil in the early 90s. She zoomed in, trembling. There was no doubt. This was the man from the hotel. The man from her mother's past. And maybe the man who had no idea he was someone's father. Ava stared at the photo for long minutes, as if it might suddenly move or speak. The man's expression, even in stillness, seemed to carry warmth. He looked approachable, familiar, a stranger, yet not. She noted the name of the magazine, Crônicas da Alma, a monthly publication with heartfelt essays and personal reflections. She found a contact email at the bottom of the page. For a long moment, she hovered over her keyboard. What would she even say? "Hi, you don't know me, but you might be my father." It sounded absurd, cruel even. Instead, she typed something simple. "Dear Mr. Harper, I recently came across one of your chronicles and felt deeply moved by your words. I'd like to meet you if possible. I believe we might share something in common. Ava." She read it twice, took a deep breath, and hit send. The next day, she received a response. "Ava, thank you for your message. I'll be in Rio next week for a literary event. Let's meet. Café do Forte, Thursday at 4 p.m. David. Her hands were trembling as she read. She would see him in person. The week felt endless. Every time she imagined the meeting, 1,000 possible outcomes played in her mind. He'd laugh, he'd cry, he'd get up and walk away. She didn't know what to expect. Thursday arrived. She wore something simple, her mother's favorite earrings, and carried the letter in her bag, folded neatly as if it was sacred. The Café de Fort was quiet that afternoon. Soft jazz played in the background. The breeze carried the scent of sea and coffee. At exactly 4 p.m., he walked in. He looked exactly like the photo, only more human. His presence filled the space gently. His eyes scanned the tables and stopped on her. He approached, cautiously. "Ava," she stood. "David." They shook hands, then sat. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he smiled almost apologetically. "You look familiar." Her eyes filled with tears. She handed him the letter. As he read, his face changed. Confusion, recognition. Then something deeper. Something that reached into the past and rewrote everything. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "I didn't know," he said. "I swear. To you, I never knew." Ava just nodded, her heart pounding, and in that silence, something heavy began to lift. They talked for more than 2 hours. David asked about Ava's childhood, about Caroline, and listened with genuine attention. He laughed at some of her stories, got emotional at others. There was a tenderness in his eyes that made Ava ache. For the time they lost, for the memories they never shared. When they finally stood to leave, he said softly, "Can we meet again?" Ava nodded. They exchanged numbers and parted with an awkward, lingering hug. She walked away with her heart full of questions, but also of something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept reading the letter again and again, and for some reason, she couldn't stop thinking about her mother's eyes the day before she died, eyes full of something unspoken. And then, as if guided by instinct, she returned to the old box of keepsakes. There, hidden under a stack of old greeting cards, she found another envelope. This one sealed. The handwriting on it was unmistakable. Caroline's. For Ava, if she ever finds him. She opened it with trembling fingers. "My daughter, if you're reading this second letter, it means you found David, and now it's time you knew the truth. I did tell him, or at least, I tried. When I discovered I was pregnant, I went to his house. But I was received not by David, but by his mother. She looked me up and down, and before I could even say his name, she told me I wasn't welcome. She knew. She knew I was pregnant. She told me to stay away, that David had a career ahead of him, that I would ruin everything. She even offered me money. I was too young, too afraid, and she was cruel. So I walked away. I never spoke to him again, and when I found out he had returned to New York shortly after, I took it as fate. I'm sorry I couldn't be stronger. I hope one day you forgive me. Caroline." Ava sat on the floor, letter in hand, her face soaked with tears. So much had been taken from them, not by life, but by someone else's decision, and now that someone might still not know the truth had come out. The next morning, Ava sat at her usual cafe, the second letter folded beside her coffee cup. She had barely slept. Her heart felt heavy with grief, not just for what she lost, but for what her mother had endured alone. She messaged David. "Can we talk?" He replied almost instantly, "I'm on my way." When he arrived, she didn't speak right away. She simply handed him the letter. He read it in silence, his jaw tightening, his expression hardening into something deeper, something wounded. When he looked up, there were tears in his eyes. "I never knew. She told me Caroline had left without a word, that she wasn't serious, that she'd moved on." His voice cracked. "I trusted her." Ava reached across the table and placed her hand over his. There were no words to erase the years, but something passed between them, a silent pact not to waste what they had now. Later that week, David invited Ava to a small house in the hills of Santa Teresa. It had a garden full of jasmine and a porch with a view of the city. It was quiet, simple, and full of his books and notebooks. "This place has always been my retreat," he said. "Now I want it to be yours too." They talked more, laughed more. Slowly the gaps began to close. Not entirely, but enough for something new to begin. A few months later, Ava stood before a full audience at a local literary festival. David was beside her. Together they launched a collection of essays called Letters We Never Sent, written by both of them. When she stepped to the microphone, she paused, breathing deeply. "I used to think I was missing a part of myself," she said, "until I realized the missing piece wasn't gone. It had just been waiting to be found." Applause filled the room. Among the crowd, Caroline's photo stood framed on a table near the stage, smiling, proud, and finally at peace. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more emotional journeys like Ava's. Would you have had the courage to open that letter? Tell us in the comments. Your story might inspire someone else. And if you believe in second chances and the power of the truth, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time.